Stephen Jones, Shadow Assistant Treasurer here in Parliament. Stephen, thank you for your time.
Great to be with you.
Now, yesterday you were calling for Brian HARTZER's head to go. What do you make of today's development?
I don't think he had any alternative. I thought his position was untenable. Once it became clear that the bank had basically been facilitating paedophiles accessing sites overseas through their payments network, that the bank hadn't put in place the proper procedures and the board hadn't put in place the oversight, the position of the chairman and the position of the CEO were untenable.
You surprised it took so long?
I thought it might have happened a little earlier. I was certain it had happened before the end of the week. Whether it was the spectre of the shareholders meeting in a couple of weeks' time which prompted them, I don't think the media cycle went the way they expected it to. We were showing some restraint from our point of view. We thought common sense would and should prevail. In the end it has. But I will say this, not the end for the Westpac board. It was a failure of management, but it was also a failure of governance and oversight. I think every bank board around the country should be paying close attention to what's gone on with both the ANZ and the Commonwealth Bank cases. But I think this should also serve as a very, very stiff prompt to the government that their track record of implementing the government's recommendations from the Royal Commission is not good enough. Only 6 of the 76 recommendations have been implemented. Only 7 days of Parliament left. Get your skates on, guys. We've got to get this done.
When it comes to the government's response, you're right, they were quite muted in their response up until now. Do you think it shows, though, that there is that kind of lack of understanding at the bank level of how this stuff plays out in the general public? If they're saying, look, this isn't an Enron or a Lehman Brothers, yeah, it's a lot worse in a lot of this aspect. The bank's not going down, but you've been allowing a lot of really bad behaviour to go ahead. Is that a cultural problem that we need to be addressing?
Look, I think they're way out of touch, quite clearly. The CEO was way out of touch, the chairman was way out of touch. In fact, when I reread through yesterday the comments of the chairman who was saying basically we'll keep him there if we can get away with it. That was what prompted me, frankly, to intervene and say, not good enough, time's up, you've got to go. If the instinctive response of the chairman is not to take responsibility but to say, do we think we can get away with this? And that's very, very wrong. And I think every board in every bank and every financial institution in the country has got to revisit the lessons of the Royal Commission, not just the recommendations, but the public outcry that led to the Royal Commission.
Well, that's the surprising thing, isn't it? I mean, given what a shocking period they've had at every level in terms of the cultural problems that an individual could be of that view. Let's just ride this out.
Yeah, absolutely the wrong instinct from both the board and the chairman, and I think it's got to send a very, very clear message to every bank and every bank board around the country. If we thought the Royal Commission was over, and if we thought the uproar, the concern in the public was over, it's not. And every time one of these instances comes up and it's not well handled, then the public is going to have the same response.
Just on your point about the Banking Royal Commission recommendations not being enacted, what should be being addressed in this next fortnight isn't being addressed? Because a lot of those recommendations are for reviews, for check-ins later down the track. What could actually be done right now that's not being done? Well,
look, there's a couple of easy wins there that I've reached out to government and said, we're willing to work with you on this. Bring the legislation in, it'll see a quick passage through the Parliament. I've previously identified the anti-hawking laws. We support them, the government supports them. Get your skates on, make it happen. It means over the Christmas period, customers won't have predatory selling behaviours of superannuation and insurance products. That's number one. Number two, reforming the claims handling processes for general insurance products. We're going into natural disaster seasons, bushfires, floods, cyclones. I hope it doesn't happen, but you'd have to be silly to say there wasn't going to be some pattern of natural disaster. Claims handling follows. A whole heap of reforms have got to be put in place to ensure that the customers get what they bought when it comes to their insurance products. 2 easy reforms that could have been done, would have had our backing. We could go into Christmas and that hasn't been done. Not good enough.
Stephen Jones, appreciate your time as always.
Great to be with you.
Thanks for that.